Welcome to As One Voice. This is going to be the episode 2, and I know it's a little out of order. This is what you get. We have a couple more interviews coming up here on the horizon, and I want to kind of make sure I'm able to input some important information in between some of these interviews. And just to be clear as well, I don't want you to think that this is just going to be a VA bashing podcast. Although many of the stories are going to be bashing the VA, there are going to be veterans that have positive stories that they can share about their VA experience and their locations of certain VA hospitals or clinics that treated them well. And that's what we want to hear. We want to be able to hear that so we can put that information out to other veterans, because I'm a firm believer that there's many veterans that avoid VA care because of the horror stories that they hear or see on Facebook or on YouTube or podcasts. It seems like you're not going to find a veteran that does not have at least one bad story. Unfortunately, there seems to be a whole lot of veterans that have a lot of bad stories, and it really needs to stop. So I want to start this podcast off by explaining that there are many veteran service organizations that exist. The AMVETS, the American Legion, the VFW, and so forth. And these guys are supposed to be for the veterans, and their top level management is up in Washington, D.C., where they can be located closer to the politicians and the lawmakers. The Congressional Committee on Veterans Affairs holds hearings each year for the VSOs, and that's when these agencies have their moment on record to fight for veterans' rights. However, if you start watching these, you'll start seeing where their priorities lie, and they're not always where they should be, in my opinion. Now, I do track on the committee hearings, and I do track on the decisions that are supposed to be made and so forth. And that's what I'm trying to do, is bring that information to light, so that way, as veterans, we can make better decisions. And there's a lot of veterans who do not pursue VA healthcare and help because they see the results from other veterans because of what they did or what they didn't do, or the lack of fight in the organization or what have you. One of the headlines that made it out last week: class action lawsuits that are being brought about against the VA for extending the appeals longer than 18 months, stating that it's not good it doesn't benefit the veterans to have appeals lasting that long, and which is true. Usually the rule of thumb is 2 years after you submit an appeal, you're not going to hear anything back. And I pretty much was able to time most of my appeals that way. However, the VA is not really allowing it to be public knowledge that the class action lawsuits are occurring, and neither are the veteran service organizations. I think I've seen one headline from one of them recently regarding that, and more veterans need to know about that, because if their appeals have been longer than 18 months and they're still waiting for a decision, then that's something you need to contact these attorneys about. So, and I'm actually waiting for a call back from the attorneys right now, as a matter of fact, to be added to that class action lawsuit. And the reason for that is the VA wants most veterans to go through the e-benefits, because they want the veterans to do it electronically. And one of the reasons why they want it to happen electronically is because that allows them being the VA, the ability to keep veterans away from important information that they need to know. And what I mean by that is that if you do it electronically, one, there's no way for you to track things. If you do it by mail, there's a lot of ways for you to track things and to maintain proof. And I always recommend having proof of everything you do anyway, a paper copy. That way, if the VA turns around and says that they lost something or they never received something that could be important to your claim, you can turn around with proof to show them that yes, they did receive it, because I have the signed copy of what you received and when, and here's the entire packet that I sent. So it's kind of best to be proactive about your own case. But with this class action lawsuit on e-benefits, it used to show the status of your appeals and your claims. And on my 2016 appeal, it showed that I had 135,400 something claims ahead of my case. And that's 2016, which means there's no way they're going to be processing that anytime soon. And in 2017, there's another appeal that had 135,000 claims ahead of it as well. So what that means is, even if you did the simple math, it's well over 18 months that it's been sitting in Washington, D.C. at the board waiting for a decision. Now, what's even funnier is that one of my appeals that was recent disappeared. It didn't really disappear. The VA came back and said that they combined it. So they canceled this one because they combined it with another one. And the reason why they did that was because the Mission Act just took over. And what that means is the Mission Act, the VA promised that your claim will be processed and done the right way in 6 to 9 months after you submit it. Well, if that was the case, then they would be coming quickly onto the timeline that they laid out. And in other words, they would have to come to a conclusion a lot faster, but they'd have to prove it. Now, because they can't do that, that's why they canceled one appeal and put it on another, so that way they'd have more time to sit on it. So this is reasons to join the class action lawsuit, is because they pull crap like that. I've caught them doing a lot of shady things, and once again, this is what drives me for this podcast. VA's sending me to a lot of appointments, and I have a lot of horror stories, so I'm going to try to spread them out through different podcasts. But one example of what the VA likes to do is they've been pushing me through a lot of different appointments consistently. And I've been fighting them for the last 13 years, and in the last 13 years, they have never labeled anything permanent in total, despite my laundry list of disabilities from the parachute accidents. And they keep on trying to do this because they want to try to reduce my overall disability rating. So why would they want to do that just for little old me? Well, it seems like somebody had gone into the system when I had a congresswoman back in 2005 actually helping me out, because I was trying to make sure that my guys that were getting out of the Navy after me would have been covered when they got out. Well, she beat up the VA secretary pretty good, and as soon as she didn't get reelected, that's when things started to go downhill, and the VA was setting their screws into me. So with that being said, one of the things that they like to do is they like to set up appointments with different clinics. QTC is one of the clinics I went to in Virginia, and QTC seemed to like to write up reports a certain way. Now, the veteran can't get a copy of their report after they attend it, so they have their medical appointment. They go to the medical appointment. They can't request it from QTC. They have to wait about 2 to 3 months and try to request it from the VA. Well, today, now you put in a Freedom of Information Act request as soon as you leave an appointment, because the VA is going to sit on those requests, and they're going to try to do everything they can to delay you getting those requests. So with that being said, once you finish an appointment, make sure you immediately put in a Freedom of Information Act request for that appointment, and be precise in what you write on that request, so that way there's no gray area. The VA can't define it any other way than what you describe it. So that being said, normally what we would have to do is you get out of an appointment, you wait about 3 months, and then you request that assessment. And as it would turn out, once I would get the assessment, read it over, it's amazing on the 180 from the appointment to the report, because I am not flexible. I haven't been flexible for many, many years because of the injuries. And yet in one of the appointments, looks like I was a gymnast with how I could bend and flex and all this other stuff. So that's when I started to realize it was really important to get a copy of all my assessments to make sure that it's on the up and up, because a lot of what is written wasn't actually conducted. And that's why I started taking notes during my appointments. And once physicians start seeing you taking notes during an appointment, they start realizing that they're going to have to be by the book, and they're going to have to do things on the up and up, because you now have an active list of everything that they did or didn't do. And so when you get your report, you can cause hate and discontent if they said you were able to do something you weren't physically able to do, like in my case. So one of the things that the VA's done to me, since they like to constantly put me in for reevaluations, they have sent me to appointments where they never sent my medical documentation to that doctor. So the doctor was unable to know my history prior to making their assessment. So when they write up their report, it is a kind of report that the VA likes to see, which is why the VA uses certain clinics, such as QTC. So all of a sudden, you get a denied rating in the mail, and you're wondering how that could be when you talk to the doctor, and the doctor agreed that, oh yeah, this is, that parachute accident, your foot's destroyed. And I learned quick though when I went to one of the civilian doctors, and she even admitted that she never received any of the medical documentation on me. And so just talking with her as, could my feet be this damaged because of the parachute landings? And she's like, yeah, absolutely. And I was like, okay, cool. Is there any way you could put that in the report then? She said, oh, no, I have to write that report the way the VA wants me to. So right then and there, it told me that it did me no good to try to get any documentation from these physicians, because they're going to do it the way the VA wants them to do it. Bring to present day, I get sent for an eye exam. Mind you, I've been seeing a specialist 3 times over the last year and a half. Plus, I've been going to eye rehab because my vision's been tanking. And every 6 weeks, I've been going to eye rehab, driving the hour and a half to get there, driving the hour and a half back, which, when you have a bad back, doesn't do good things to your back. But I did it. And yet the VA is not using that. What they do is they sent me to a civilian doctor who dilated my pupils, did an eye exam, and made it a point to say, well, as we get older, our eyesight's naturally going to get worse, which tells me that's exactly what his report is going to say. So that's exactly what the VA wants to see. So that way they can turn around and deny me even further. So their tactics aren't new. They're not even smart. And at times I wish they would come up with something new so that way I could start tracking that as well. Because the more that they do and the more I can track, the better I can help other veterans avoid it. So, part of what they do is you're on camera as soon as you pull up into a physician's parking lot anyway. So, if you're doing cartwheels all the way to the front door and then walk in like you got hit by a truck, it doesn't fool anybody. Which is also why whenever I would consult a veteran, I would let them know, I'm not going to tell you how to lie to the VA. If it's not in your record, if it's not connected to your military service, don't lie to try to get a disability rating, because there's too many veterans out there that are trying hard for years to try to get rated for their disabilities, and the VA system is so backlogged and so full of people who basically live at the VA that it makes it tough on everybody. So another appointment, had it done at the QTC, was for my hearing exam. And this is probably my fourth or fifth since I become a civilian. But this time it was a little different. And being a veteran, anyone who's a veteran knows about the beep and hitting the button when you're in the soundproof room. And we all hated that. Anyway, so I did the hearing exam and sitting down talking with the technician and talking with her about it, and tell her I was a little aggravated that I got to keep going to these hearing tests when, I had to start reading lips because my hearing is so bad that a lot of times even when it starts ringing, I can't hear what somebody's saying to me. So I started to learn how to read lips most of the time. And she's like, yeah, actually my husband's the operations officer at that team, which was pretty awesome since that was the last team that I just was stationed at. And I was like, really? She goes, yeah, you guys might not have hearing loss, but you definitely have hearing damage because of the shooting the 50 cals and the Mark 19s and the machine guns and, driving jet boats all the time and then jumping out of planes all the times. And she's like, yeah, my report is going to reflect that hearing loss may not be prevalent or present, but it's hearing damage is definitely part of your case. But when I actually requested that report and I received it from the VA, it did not say that. It did not say that at all, which tells me that either QTC management got word from the VA and said, hey, this needs to be rewritten, or the VA decided to change the wording themselves. But I don't think she changed it. I truly don't, especially when she was so empathetic and her husband was the operations officer at my team. I'd fair to guess that she'd be more on my side than she was at anyone else's side. Anyway, so that's kind of the reality that we have to deal with. With that, I don't want this just to be about me. We have a couple interviews coming up with VA whistleblowers who are also veterans. Some are veterans, some aren't veterans, but whistleblowers are still being targeted. And if you don't already follow disabledveterans.org, you should start. That a lawyer out in Minnesota named Benjamin Krause, and he's sort of a watchdog that likes to report on all things VA. And chances are, if you see it in his headlines, it's probably the only place you're going to see it for a little while until the pressure gets on the VA, and then they can try to come up and spin to try to put a positive spin on their story. Anyway, he's the one that publishes a lot of the information that you normally would not hear or see. So it's kind of wise to follow him. Now, with the whistleblower side of the house, a bunch of them are going to be testifying in front of Congress here in the next couple of weeks. And we're currently in June 2019. So that's something to watch out for and start listening to their stories, because it's pretty important. These are VA employees who exposed the VA for really bad things. One of them in particular was a psychologist in Baltimore. Her name was Minu Agavelli, and she blew the whistle on the VA for improperly removing veterans from the opioid addiction treatment waiting list and exposed them for pressuring her to remove names from the waiting list. And her supervisors were pressuring her, had instructed her to schedule veterans on a made-up clinic. So the clinic that they had her schedule these veterans for didn't even exist, just to make the waiting list look shorter. So once again, VA proves their push towards more fraud. Another whistleblower was from Iowa City and was a CT tech. His name was Jeff Detbarn. Exposed the VA for a fraudulent cancellation scam, and investigations proved that this was part of a nationwide VA scam. once again, they get exposed, then the whistleblower gets targeted and then harassed or lots of retaliation on them. Finally, another whistleblower who was the original whistleblower for the Phoenix VA fiasco, Dr. Catherine Mitchell, she was targeted after being named Federal Public Servant of the Year. She was given an award for that and then succumbed to numerous different retaliation tactics from the VA. All three of these folks are going to be in front of Congress here in the next couple weeks. I believe it's next week, actually. And will be testifying against the VA. The VA wants to try to make it look like they're doing good things and that they're trying to do good things, so they're going to constantly try to put positive articles out there. However, the reality of it is their websites aren't very user-friendly, because if for a veteran that's trying to look for something, they will fall into the rabbit hole quickly and still not find what they're looking for. And the VA is not giving out any regional VA facility information or phone numbers. Because I've tried. Matter of fact, this is week 2 and I still haven't gotten contact from the regional office at all on the VA, despite being told so. This is the reason why I keep good notes, because I'm not going to take them for their word any longer, nor have I for many, many years. So let that be a lesson. If you can somehow keep record of every conversation you have and every appointment you have, you're going to be better off. That way you don't have to learn the hard way. But the big thing is you need to find the Congressional Committee on Veterans Affairs YouTube page. You need to like it. You need to keep track of it. And you need to start watching some videos and start listening to some of these questions that are asked and the information that these people who are testifying to the Congressional Committee hear the facts that are coming out of their mouth, because they're not going to say anything on record that they can't prove, and that's an important aspect to remember. However, you start watching the VA on those things, start watching representatives from the VA, and watch how quick they either divert the questioning, they answer around what should be the answer. So in other words, they give them all the information that didn't pertain to the question, so they weren't really answering the question, yet they're going to use up all the congressman or congresswoman's time. Each congressperson usually has about 2 minutes to ask a bunch of different questions. You'll notice how the question is answered and how important it is by how long they delay their answer. So if you hear an answer that's 3 or 4 minutes long, all they're trying to do is use up the time of that congressman, because some of these congresswomen and women will ask precise questions and yet won't get the answer they're looking for, and then they'll have to ask it again, and each time the person answering it will just keep delaying it. And I've watched the secretary just give BS answers, and this was Secretary McDonald, not Wilkie. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt because I haven't really watched him on the videos as of yet, but I shall be, that's for sure, and then I can actually give my opinion on that. But the moral of the story is that there's entirely too many veterans such as myself who spend years upon years just trying to get their case solved, and people don't understand how much time and energy, aggravation is wasted on dealing with VA garbage. And there are good VSO agents out there, there are poor VSO agents out there, and it's not just one. So it's not like you can say, well, the VFW is good or the American Legion's not good. No, it's not like that. They're all good in their own way, and there are bad agents as well as good agents in each organization. So the goal is to find good agents. However, that being said, there are going to be quick word of mouth when there's a good agent, and that means that good agent's going to start receiving a lot of clients, which means less time is going to be committed to your case. I've seen that happen with many people, and unfortunately the veterans have to pay for that. So ultimately, because my case got dragged out for so long and the VA was just consistently trying to hammer me with different tactics, I decided to finalize my case with an attorney office out of Arizona, I believe. Anyway, there's a website. I'll include it in the description of this video. There's a website to go to actually look up legitimate law offices that'll handle and are qualified to handle veterans cases. In other words, with veteran service organizations, the person that handles your cases, they have to be certified. So that means they have to take a test, they have to pass a test, and they have to keep doing ongoing education to maintain their certification as a veteran service agent. Now, I know this because I put in my application to be a veteran service agent. And, I'm still waiting, of course, for the thumbs up or thumbs down. If I get the thumbs up, which there's no reason why they shouldn't, other than the fact that they probably don't want me to be a veteran service agent, then I can take the test. As long as I pass the test, I can be an agent. That means I can represent veterans, which once again, I'm pretty sure the VA does not want me to have the ability to do. But with that being said, please pass on this information, pass on this channel, the page, to your veteran friends and family, and ask them to do the same. That's the only way we can actually get organized. And that's why I called this podcast As One Voice, because I want us to be so organized that we are one loud voice that they cannot ignore. Unfortunately, for many veterans, they pass away before they see any sort of relief in their case. Case in point, politicians are constantly tweeting now, oh, we're starting our conversation on Agent Orange for the Vietnam veterans. This is 2019, and these veterans have been suffering horrifically just trying to gain some sort of ratings for their exposure to Agent Orange. Their family has suffered, their offspring has been affected because of their exposure. We also see it with the Gulf War burn pits, that, veterans dying, their offspring are physically affected, not just because of their, family died, but because of the absorption of the chemicals and fumes physically affected the veteran, and then the veteran has children and it gets passed to the child. So right now, politicians are saying they're going to start discussions about Agent Orange and Blue Water Navy, and this should have been done years ago. If politicians can vote themselves a raise with minimal amounts of time, hey, we're gonna put ourselves in for a raise, and then they vote on it, within a week they got their raise. But then it takes them decades for them to pass bills that help veterans who were in theater or exposed to certain chemicals, warfare, what have you. This is ridiculous. It's getting worse and worse, and our politicians, who call themselves the leaders in their states, and I guess we have different definitions of what a leader is, but it doesn't seem like there's so much for the veterans. Never mind their citizens, their constituents in their own state. They ain't even for them. It seems like they're all just trying to get rich. They serve 3 terms and they get a lifetime paycheck and free health care. Whereas veterans, a lot of us have been having to fight consistently for decades just for minute advances and victories. And that sucks. So once again, my hope is to get the word out so we can get organized. I will tell you from my experiences that future podcasts are going to expose different facilities for being good and for being bad. So if you would, pass this on to your friends and family, ask them to do the same, because the more veterans we can get to interview, the more information we can get out, and the better that will be for other veterans. That way I can also compile accurate statistics of locations. So that way, a lot of veterans want to complain on social media about, treatment this, treatment that, but they don't want to do anything about it. So my views have always been, if you're going to complain about something, have a solution. Even if it doesn't work, just have a solution and be willing to pursue that solution. So that's what I'm doing, is I'm pursuing the solutions. So if I'm able to put out accurate statistics of, okay, 10 interviews, 8 of them were for such and such VA facility and they were positive reviews, and 2 of them were bad reviews. It seems like in these departments it wasn't too bad, in these departments it wasn't that great. Now, if somebody wants to know about a specific location, they can listen to the podcast and get that information. So that'll be quite useful. Plus, I'm going to see if I can actually post that kind of documentation on the links or documents, or at least I can get links that can lead you to the documents. One way or another, this is going to get organized and the information is going to get out. So this podcast is going to be a little shorter and then regular interviews, but I'm going to use these shorter ones that I'm going to try to do also in order to get the information out on specific areas and my experiences. So that being said, do your best to try to get these passed on to your friends and family and ask them to do the same. All right. Thanks for listening. I hope your Monday's a whole lot better than mine. Later.